Hi everybody, I have a tutorial to share with you today. We are going to be making some fairy dusters. Now I went ahead and cut some templates with my Silhouette Cameo, but you can download images from the internet and then just cut them out. I also have some bling and some embroidery floss as well as a lot of felt for this project. So I'm going to go through my felt and choose some colors that best coordinate with the images that I've chosen, and you can find all of those images on my website if you want to use the same ones. And you'll also need some wooden dowels for this project, and I found that the 1/4-inch dowels worked the best. Now I'm going to show you a few different techniques for coloring the dowels, and the first one is just to use some Lyra watercolor paints. I'm doing this in a yellow and with a little bit of orange, and this is what it looks like when it's done. And now I want to show you another technique. I'm using a Copic marker, which is a permanent alcohol-based marker. You could also use a water-based marker as well. And I want to show you then another technique as well, and I want to add some sparkle to this next dowel, and I'm using some Perfect Pearls, and I'm just mixing it a little bit with the watercolor, and it's a subtle look, but it gives it a nice shimmer. For another shimmery effect, you can also use Heidi Swapp Color Shine. Now it's time to cut out our designs using our templates, and I am just trying to find one that's going to be the appropriate size for our 12-inch dowels. And don't forget to cut out 2 pieces of felt for each one of your designs. It's actually easier to cut one piece of felt out at a time, but I was a little bit lazy and I cut both of them out at the same time. So the first one we're going to do is this balloon, which my kids said did not look like a balloon. So I'm going to be making some changes to this design in a little bit. But you want to work kind of slowly around because the hot glue will cool quickly. So you just want to do it in small sections, and you want to make sure that you leave an opening at the bottom so that you can fill it with some wool batting, and so that you also have a place to put in your dowel. Now one more thing I want to do for this one is add a twizzle, which is basically applying 2 pieces of this embroidery floss together, and I'm going to put that right there in the corner so that our balloon has a little string. So once I got that in place, then I can go ahead and fill up the balloon with some wool. And now I wasn't that careful when I was gluing the balloon shut all the way around, so it doesn't really look circular, and you'll get a closer look at that in a minute. Now we want to put a nice generous amount of glue into the inside of the balloon so that the dowel can be really well adhered inside the balloon, because these are going to get played with and we don't want anything to break. And then I'm going to add more glue around the edges so that I can seal the balloon shut. Be careful, it does get hot. Alright, so once I was done, my son said that it didn't really look like a balloon. When I asked him, oh, can you tell what this is? And he's like, no, I don't know what it is. And so I decided to go ahead and cut out 3 more balloons. That way it can kind of look like a bundle of balloons. So I went ahead and did that off camera, and now I can glue them all together just to kind of make it look like a little bunch. Now you will need to use a lot of glue to adhere them together, and you want to make sure that you give it ample time to cool down and dry, otherwise it will start to tear apart, and it's going to leave like a hard residue. So if you do that and you have to pick the glue off in order to do it again, it will take a little bit of time. I did make that mistake. Alright, so I want to show you another method here, and that's to go ahead and sew the templates together, or rather the pieces of felt together. I'm using some embroidery floss and a needle that has a wide eye so that it can fit the embroidery floss. Now this was the most time consuming of all of the techniques that I'm going to show you today, but it did look really beautiful in the end. Now you can do different kinds of stitches all the way around if you want. I'm just using a really simple one, and I'm using a color that kind of coordinates with the blue, but you could also use a highly contrasting color, and that would make for a really good design choice as well. Now I went ahead and sewed quite a bit before I started to stuff my little crescent, and that made it a little bit difficult. So I would recommend stuffing as you go, because it's really hard to get it all the way up there in that very tiny corner. Now I just want to glue those end pieces into the moon and then go ahead and stuff that dowel into it. That way those pieces don't need to be tied off. And the last thing I want to do is hang a little star from the top part of the crescent. So I went ahead and just tied off another little piece of embroidery floss, and then I'm just going to glue 2 stars together. I'm going to nest them together with the embroidery floss inside. This happens to be my favorite one of all of them. I really like the way the star dangles in the middle, but it is not as sturdy as the other ones because there's not much place for the dowel to be. The last technique I want to show you is just sewing your felt together, and I use my sewing machine for this, and I didn't really cut and sew all that well, but you can still see it's a heart, so that's fine, and once they're all done you can't tell those little imperfections anyway. Now I didn't leave that much of a hole, so I'm using like a tiny little stick in order to get this filled up with the wool batting, and the last thing we want to do is add a little bit of gold twine to the bottom part of this heart just for added interest. So I went ahead and measured off how long I wanted those strands to be, and now I'm going to put it on top of the dowel and then just kind of wedge it up into the heart and then just glue off the end pieces, and that's it for that one. Now we have one more design to do, and that is the star. Now I want to show you here how to put your twine in on the corner part of each star. It's a lot easier to nest them together. Now don't forget to leave an opening so that you can stuff your star with some wool. And then the last thing you want to do, if you want, is to add a little bling to each corner of the star. And the last thing that I did was to add one more star on the front. I made it a little bit smaller, and I also added a little jewel right to the front, and that's it for this one. So here are all the designs together. Overall, I really like the crescent and the star, but the star was also really easy to do, the large star with the gold twine coming off from the edges. I really like that one a lot. It looks really great when it's played with. So don't forget that you can check out some of my other tutorials that we have on my channel, and you can get more directions and more info and pictures by visiting my website at pepperandpine.com.